Okay, Brewers, listen to me and listen to me very, very closely. I am not going through this Strasburg stuff again.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On MLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTubes as I scratched my nose. It happens. We're all have to get through that right now. We're going to cut through a couple things today. We're going to be talking a little bit about who owned baseball. The Milwaukee Brewers winning streak is over with a 1-0 thriller that happened in Seattle. And I give a suggestion to the Rangers for something they need to do later on the show. But Jacob Misiorowski, I have some thoughts, I have some concerns, I have a little bit of a history lesson, and folks, I'm going to beg you to listen to me because I really, really think I'm onto something. Let's do the trivia question before we get into my modest proposals for Jacob Misiorowski. The trivia question was, we did this. Who are the only two managers to lead the Red Sox to multiple World Series titles? I had this when Gabby was on from Locked On Red Sox, and Big John 08865, who's an everyday Sully listener, got it correct. I bet a lot of you got Terry Francona. I'm guessing a lot of you would get Terry Francona, but he got Bill Kerrigan. That is a classic Boston name. As someone who lived almost my entire childhood in New England, I met a lot of people who sound like a Bill Kerrigan. Bill Kerrigan was a native New Englander. He was a player manager and was the manager when the Red Sox won back-to-back World Series in 1915, 1916. The Red Sox won four World Series titles in the 1910s and had three different managers, but Bill Kerrigan was the only one to pick up two, and Francona, of course, had 2004 and 2007. So there you go. There you go. Good job there, Big John 08865. Let's talk a little bit about who owned baseball for the what the hell? What the hell day is it? It is the it's the 22nd day. It for the 22nd day of July. You're probably catching this on the 23rd, unless you're sitting in the room with me right now. And so, can you give me a glass of water? So who owned baseball for the 22nd day of July 2025? Spencer Horwitz of the Pirates. He got on base 4 times, drove in 2, scored 2. The Pirates beat the Tigers 8-5. I'm sure the Tigers thought they're going to pick up a couple extra wins there. Wrong. Hey, Christopher Sanchez. Boy, I picked the Phillies at the beginning of the year to win the World Series, and I'm starting to think I may not be wrong about that. I like their pitching. I like their hitting. Things are clicking right now. And even though the Mets are breathing right down their neck, I like what the Phillies are doing. Christopher Sanchez, complete game victory. Yeah, you're still allowed to do that. He struck out 12 Red Sox over 9 innings. Phillies got the 4-1 complete game victory. Cody Bellinger went 3 for 4 with a home run and set up the dramatic home run by Rice in the 9th inning. The Yankees, despite Volpe's 400th error, I may be wrong about that, his 400th error, elite shortstop defensively. But the Yankees, hey, give them credit. It was a game where they blew the lead, and they came roaring back. Home run by Rice in the 9th inning, but Cody Bellinger set up with a 3-4 game and a home run. The game of the night took place between Seattle and the red-hot Milwaukee Brewers, and Logan Gilbert was the star. He struck out 10 Brewers in 6 and the third innings, and the Mariners blanked the Brewers 1-0. It was an absolutely thrilling game that played there. Half Wobs, and the Half Wobs, Rich Hill now has 14 franchises he's played for. He made his debut with the Royals, and he pitched well. 5 innings, allowed 1 run, but the Royals were shut out 6-0. And then in the Mets and Angels game, it was Nolan Shawnuel. I always pronounce his name wrong. Nolan Shawnuel. He went 4 for 5, but the Angels came up short 3-2 to the Mets. Eduardo Rodriguez. Why can't the Red Sox get players like him? He threw a shutout ball into the 7th inning, but the Diamondbacks lost 3-1 to the Astros. And look out for so many players on the Diamondbacks having for sale sign on them, and they could clean up because it's a seller's market. Andy Pages hit a game-tying 3-run home run, added a single and a walk. Dodgers, who are really on a little bit of a slide right now, and Tanner Scott's hurt, so they got another injury on the team. Dodgers lost to Minnesota 10-7. And we'll talk a little bit about the AL race right there. But the Rich Hill, I just think that's a great story. He's back. He has pitched every year since 2005. He made his debut with the 2005 Cubs at age 25, and he is and now he's pitched all over the map. Another reason to be mad at the Astros for banging the trash can in 2017 is it denied Rich Hill a chance to get a World Series ring, as he had a wonderful year for the Dodgers that year. Bounced around a little bit here, a little bit there, played last year a handful of games with the Red Sox. We all thought his career was over, but no, he's back with Kansas City, and good for him, good for that, and good for everyone else. It's interesting. He's had a wonderful career. This is his 21st season in the major leagues. Many, many wonderful memories. And he had 0 All-Star game appearances. 0. Now, Jacob Misiorowski, who was 3 years old when Rich Hill made his debut, and Jacob Misiorowski has now pitched in 6 games. He has an All-Star game appearance, and Rich Hill does not. I'm not saying I'm just stating facts. That's all I'm doing. I'm stating facts. Well, Jacob Misiorowski pitched in that game against Gilbert and the Seattle Mariners, and the Milwaukee Brewers. Their losing streak ended tonight, and Chicago won, as I mentioned, the game against Rich Hill. So the Brewers and the Cubs are, as of this recording, tied for first place in the National League Central, and say it with me, tied for the best record in baseball. Best record in baseball is not the Yankees. They're not even in first place. Best record in baseball is not the Tigers, not the Astros, not Philadelphia, not the Mets, not Los Angeles. It's the Brewers and the Cubs. But when I saw that Misiorowski was taken out in the 4th inning, I did a gulp, and I thought, oh no. That was my first thought. Oh no. What happened? Is his career over? Now, it just so happened he was lifted because they're keeping an eye on his innings. And I had a little bit of PTSD remembering the 2012 season, which, by the way, was the first year I started doing a daily podcast, way back in the old Sully Baseball show. Well, we were dealing way back then about the idea of Steven Strasburg and holding on to his innings, and the result that, was initially disastrous. In the end, it worked out. I don't want to go through that again. And I'm going to recycle some of the arguments and some of the potential solutions that I had way back in 2012 and saying, hey, folks, maybe we could do it for the Miz. All right, we're going to hear from our good friends over at Monarch Money. You ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Now, you sometimes have to track your spending, right? It's easy to do online, but sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, how many streaming services do I have? How many offers did I take your first month is free and then they start charging you? People lose track of this. Monarch Money keeps track of all this. And if you're sharing your finances with your mate, with your spouse, with that special person, it's easy to do. Monarch Money helps you manage day-to-day activity for all your accounts. And if you're looking to have all your accounts in one place, Monarch Money does that for you and helps you build savings towards a big purchase, a big event, or something special like, I don't know, my recent master's degree that I earned. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Check out monarchmoney.com. Okay, let's be Superman and spin the earth backwards and go back to when I started doing the Old Sully Baseball podcast in 2012. I was adamant back then that the Nationals should have adopted or adapted is the correct word I'm looking for, how they were going to use Steven Strasburg that year. In case you forgot, Strasburg was the number one pick, and like Misiorowski, exploded onto the scene with a dynamic debut. And almost immediately, because everyone's arm is basically a Fabergé egg, he needed Tommy John surgery. He came back for 2012, and the Nationals at the beginning of the year said, we're going to limit him. We're going to cap his innings at this amount. I don't remember the exact amount. It was like 103 or 140. Whatever it was, they said, this is our specific number we're capping him at. Because he's coming back. He's the coming back from Tommy John. He's the diamond of their system. And the Nationals that year were not expected to do much. The Braves were still a solid team. The Phillies had one of the best years in the history of their franchise in 2011. And the Marlins were spending money like a drunken sailor for the new stadium. And the Mets were still there. The Mets weren't great, but you know what? The Nationals were looked upon as not going to be a contender. So who cares if they shut down Steven Strasburg in September? Well, the perfect storm happened. The Braves were disappointed. They were a wild card team, but they were disappointed. The Phillies got long in the tooth. The Mets imploded and the Marlins imploded. And so suddenly the Nationals won the division for the first time since going to Washington. And they're the best team in the National League. And all of a sudden, the thought of, oh my God, we could win the World Series. We could have the best record in the National League and go into the playoffs as favorites. And the thought of shutting down Steven Strasburg in the middle of a pennant race seemed insane. And they did it. They shut him down. They did not use him in the postseason. The Nationals' thin starting rotation came to bite him in the butt, and their bullpen was gassed. I mean, listen, people blame the horrible top of the ninth inning when the Cardinals rallied when they were one strike away from elimination and came back to win the series. But look at the stats for the starting pitching in that series. With the exception of Game 4, it was dreadful. The starting pitching stunk. And Steven Strasburg was eating, sunflower seeds and reading Bazooka Joe comics as he was shut down. And I said back then, the Nationals have to win the World Series eventually with Steven Strasburg and the lead. Otherwise, this is one of the worst decisions in the history of baseball. As it turned out, that's exactly what happened. It took 7 years. But what I suggested back then was, okay, if you're going to cap him at this number of innings, let's be creative about it. Why does he have to be a starter? Why can't you say we're going to use him every 3 days or 4 days? He's going to give us 3 solid innings out of the pen. We can still use his great arm and his great talent, but we're not going to run him into the ground. But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to shut him down. Let's be creative about this. By the way, you got to see some managers do get creative about stuff like this. Like that very year, 2012, Bruce Bochy was very creative of how to use Tim Lincecum in the postseason. He made only one start, but became an invaluable middle reliever. And you've also seen over the years you can go back to the '60s where the way Earl Weaver would bring in someone like Jim Palmer, or in the '80s, someone like Oral Hershiser or Jimmy Key came up first as relief pitchers and then made the transition, or like Adam Wainwright came up initially as a relief pitcher and then made the transition. And even more recently, Chris Sale, his first year, he was used as a reliever by the Chicago White Sox and eventually made the transition to the starting pitcher. Well, I think the Brewers have to start thinking like this. If he was relieved after, was it 3 1/3 or 3 2/3, whatever it was, because they're trying to save his arm and save his innings, and doing the same with Woodruff, I understand. Okay. I'm not going to get into the whole, what's up with pitchers today conversation. That's something that is a much bigger conversation than the Brewers right now. There is something going on with how pitchers develop, how pitchers basically, if you're a terrific pitcher, you just assume your arm is going to explode at any point. It's less of an arm and more of an appendix. I think a big part of it has to do with how everyone's obsessed with radar guns as opposed to being able to pitch, and also parents who are basically treating their kids like it's a little league version of Gattaca, and you are trying to develop the perfect pitcher. Yeah, I made a Gattaca reference. I barely got it myself. And that you're sending these kids to like winter leagues and travel leagues and having them do this unnatural arm motion until they need Tommy John surgery before their bar mitzvah. And so I think that's a bigger issue, but that's a larger issue right now. Right now, the Brewers are in a situation where, like the Nationals in 2012, the National League is opening up to them. Yes, they're tied with Chicago. All they have to do is play a game better than Chicago the rest of the way, and they'll win the Central again. Now, the Phillies are excellent with very good pitching, and I still think they're the favorite. The Mets are very good. And while the Dodgers are on a little bit of a slide now, and their pitching staff kind of resembles a MASH unit, count them out at your own peril. But that being said, this is a very, very good Brewers team. This is a very good Brewers team with a lot of, solid pitchers. Now, I know not everyone is thrilled with the idea of me bringing up the Brewers as a World Series team. Was this Nicholas Chase? I'm sorry. 3329 says, I love the Brewer talk, but I have zero interest in any World Series talk. It's silly how they look going into the playoffs. Fair enough. They've had very good teams recently who have not done piddly poo in the postseason. And I can understand Brewer fans being a little bit gun shy for having their enthusiasm. But you look at this team, and while I do think they probably need one more bat, and everyone always needs a little bit of pitching depth, let's just say that you use my solution. My solution is to use Misiorowski every 4 days or maybe every 5 days for 3 innings. And they're the last 3 innings. Let's say every 4 days, he pitches the 7th, 8th, and 9th. You're not going to blow out his arm because he's not throwing super long innings, but you're getting the endings of the game. You're shutting down the game. You bring him out in the 7th, 8th, and 9th to say, go, do your thing. Do your thing, Miz. It's Miz time. And he piles up a couple of saves, gives Tyler McGill the night off there. And you able to use his talent, but still be able to have that depth down the stretch. And guess what? If you have the same issues with Woodruff, who pitched great the other day, he pitched fabulous, but he also was coming off of injuries, and he's significantly older than Misiorowski. Maybe use him in the same way as well. Peralta is there. Peralta's having a fabulous year. He's having a fantastic year. He is still the ace of the team. Priester, Quintana, Patrick are all pitching well for this team. And let's go say the Brewers take some of their young players. If you remove Misiorowski from the top prospects of the Brewers, everyone else there is in AA or below. None of their top prospects are going to be playing on the 2025 Milwaukee Brewers. I'm not saying empty out the farm system, but there's about 4 or 5 third basemen in their top prospects. So you could sacrifice one or two of them. And if you could bring in, let's just say Mitch Keller, or let's say Eduardo Rodriguez, or someone that the Diamondbacks are trying to sell, and you say, hey, you now have a solid 5-man rotation without Misiorowski and without Woodruff, and you can use them in sort of a super reliever way. You get 3 innings out of them. You're not running them into the ground, but you're also not having it be basically an opener situation. Well, okay, they got 9 outs from Misiorowski at the beginning. Why not get the 9 outs at the end? If you've gone through 6 solid innings and you've got Priester pitching well, and then all of a sudden out comes Misiorowski in the 7th inning, it'll shorten a bunch of games and maybe not drive the rest of the bullpen into the ground. We got to start thinking creatively here, folks, because if you are operating on the mentality that you're going to cap his innings, and it's too late in the season to have a philosophical discussion about whether or not that's the right thing to do. What you don't want to do is put yourself in the situation that the Nationals found themselves in 2012, where they got to the postseason and they could not utilize the talent of their terrific pitcher they have. Give it some thought. Getting 3 innings out of him every 4 or 5 days, he's not going to have a super high pitch count. He's not going to have a super high innings count, but you get the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Every 5 days, the 7th, 8th, and 9th, you don't have to worry about. Out comes Misiorowski. When he comes out, the place goes bananas. And you tell the day it's going to be. It's a Misiorowski headliner day. He doesn't start, he headlines. Now, I think that they should be doing that for excellent pitchers who are only allowed to pitch 6 innings. I'd be all for, you know what? Use an opener for the first, another reliever for the 2nd and 3rd, and then bring in your headliner for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. If you're only allowing 6 innings for some of these pitchers, have them be the last 6. But for Misiorowski, this could be a terrific year. The Brewers are trying to win their first World Series ever in their franchise history. And the city of Milwaukee is looking for their first World Series title since 1957. Yeah, Milwaukee's had a more recent World Series than the city of Cleveland, but I digress. Think about it. How am I wrong? If you're going to shut down the number of innings, and I can't scream at the Tides and tell them otherwise, because Misiorowski is like a Fabergé egg who they have to protect. But at the same time, you have this super talent. And if you're going to get to the postseason and not use them, then, what in the name of Pete Vukovich are we doing here? I love to say Pete Vukovich because it sounds like you're saying something dirty. And you're actually just saying, Pete Vukovich. And if you don't know who Pete Vukovich is, he was the ace of the Brewers the last time they went to the World Series. And to give you an idea how long ago that was, they were in the American League back then. It was 82. We weren't sure if Darth Vader was Luke's father. That's a long time. So give it some thought. If you're going to shut down the innings, fine. Then let's adjust which innings he does pitch. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important and why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the number 1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or your computer. Now, if you juggle 2 phones just to keep your business and personal calls separate, OpenPhone can solve that instantly. And the AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. OpenPhone is offering Locked On MLB listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. Spell it out, openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers from another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. That's OpenPhone. phone. Now, the American League right now is sorry, I'll get that open phone thing off. The American League right now is an absolute jumble. We knew this was going to happen. We knew it was going to be a log jam. The Yankees, as said, pull off a big win, but they're still 3 games back of Toronto. The Red Sox. Someone's got to tell the catcher to get their hand back a little bit. This is getting ridiculous. The Rays are on the cusp of getting back into the playoffs right now. And part of me will root like hell for them because I want to see playoff games in George Steinbrenner Field. Wouldn't that be something if the Yankees played the Rays in George Steinbrenner Field? But the team that should be scaring the hell out of everyone in the American League right now, I think, is a team that is not currently a playoff team, and that's the Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers are a team that I picked to win the pennant, and I'm not saying I necessarily think that's a great pick right now because it's late July and they're the outside looking in, but they won again today. And look, the Red Sox could fall apart like that. The Rays could fall apart like that. The Mariners could fall apart like that. The Yankees are playing dumb baseball. The Blue Jays had a phenomenal midpoint of the season. They're built on not exactly the strongest foundation. A team like the Rangers are exactly the type of team you don't want to face in the postseason, especially because their pitching is coming together. And if Jacob deGrom is healthy, then they got themselves a player who, when healthy, is a Hall of Famer. And they have a manager who's been there and done that with Bruce Bochy. And in every other year situation, well, this is every other year for the Rangers. I think they need to do this because one of the big problems they have right now, and they are looking at some relief pitchers and getting some pitching depth. That's fine. Their lineup needs another hitter. And it almost doesn't matter what position they play. They just need another bat in that lineup. We saw that happen with the Yankees last year. And I'm always quick to criticize Brian Cashman, but he made a very, very good trade last year, albeit one that it did cost them a couple of good, solid players, to be sure. But the acquisition of Jazz Chisholm Jr., not the old man, Jazz Chisholm Jr., was a really smart move because the Yankees desperately needed a batter who wasn't an easy out. And Chisholm played out of position, but he was not an easy out. He wasn't an automatic out when he was there. And he also provides some speed and a little bit of a spark plug, and that's great. He's fit very well with the Yankees. But suddenly having someone in that lineup who another position where it was, oh, here's an easy out. Oh, it's no longer an easy out, really had a ripple effect on the rest of the lineup. And when he arrived there, the Yankees really played very well and put the Orioles in the dust. Remember, the Orioles and Yankees were playing neck and neck for a while, and eventually they took off. Now, it also helped that they had Garrett Cole pitching well, and they had phenomenal year from Judge, and they had Juan Soto, of course, but that extra bat in there helped the Yankees, and I think the Rangers need that too. If the Rangers had an extra bat, I believe that it will have a ripple effect on the rest of the lineup, especially if you know that you can turn it over to the top when you don't have the bottom of the lineup being just a bunch of, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I think they need to get O'Hearn from the Orioles. I think that is, to me, get him, put him in the field, DH, wherever you do. But if you insert him into that lineup, I think that will have a ripple effect that will pick up the run support. It'll pick up the lineup turning over. And I think that it will help the team leapfrog one of those other squads that are really not, I don't have a ton of confidence in. I think there's going to be an absolute log jam in the American League wild card. And if we see it right now, the Rangers are only one game out in the loss column of a playoff spot. They're a game and a half behind Boston. Now, they're a game behind Tampa Bay. They have to leapfrog a couple of teams. I think they're capable of doing that. Especially, let's face it, we know Seattle doesn't have the greatest record in terms of coming up big down the stretch. Boston, who knows what the hell they are. And Tampa Bay is going to be playing most of their games on the road and coming back home to a minor league stadium. You don't know how that's going to affect the team because we have no data. We have no precedent of this. And you have Bruce Bochy and a good team laying in the weeds, and watch them do exactly what they did in 2023, which was get in as a wild card team. They're on the road as a wild card team. All that stuff happened. And by the end, Bochy is looking at yet another ring. Do I think they're going to win it all? I don't know. But I do think one extra bat will go a long way. And I think that extra bat should be O'Hearn. I think that he would be a perfect fit for the team. So that's my trade deadline suggestion there. By the way, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. For your second listen, keep it right here for the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And let's go over the trivia question, shall we? Trivia question is this. We'll keep it Milwaukee related. How many Milwaukee Sluggers, both Braves and Brewers, have hit 50 home runs in a season? Now, the Braves in Milwaukee have had two of the greatest home run hitters in the history of baseball. And the Milwaukee Brewers have had their share of sluggers, RBI leaders, and home run champions over the years. So how many Milwaukee Braves and Milwaukee Brewers have hit 50 home runs in a season? And I will tell you this, the one little hint, it's not zero. This is not a trick question. So how many Milwaukee Sluggers, Braves or Brewers, have hit 50 home runs in a season? Put it right down here on the YouTubes and follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days. And on Instagram, I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. The best way to get a hold of us is right here on the YouTubes. Talking about who owned baseball, Rich Hill's big career, a solution for Misiorowski, and a suggestion for the Rangers. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm yours, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.